I've learned a lot about the YouTube algorithm, and I know that you're not going to get paid on views unless you're getting millions. And I'm like, I know I'm not going to get millions of views unless if I'm going up and down the street videoing the hookers here in Lleras or in downtown, because they're the ones that get millions of views about Colombia, about Medellín particularly. And I'm like, I don't want to promote that. Yeah. So I want to promote my life and what I've done, the turnaround in my life, maybe inspire someone, but I want to make money. So I created a product before I even started the channel called the Medellín Masterclass, which is a relocation masterclass for anybody that wants to relocate to Colombia to learn everything and get all the resources and contacts for lawyers, moving companies, real estate, everything that you need to move here, right?
You started as an English teacher at one point?
Yeah, so like when I first got back to, when I came to Medellin after the 6 months in Bogota, obviously I quit my job there, but the whole time, my dad had sent me his used laptop, his laptop that he let me borrow. So on my laptop, I was reaching out to clients via email and cold calling by finding them on Craigslist. I would find like the beauty salon person putting up her ad on Craigslist and then going and looking up her website and being like, oh yeah, your website's shit. I can definitely help you. And this is how. These are the 3 steps how you can get a client right now. And it was basically SEO tips, particularly with corruption. There's corruption at all levels here, from the smallest kid selling chiclets to the president of the country. Corruption is a big problem, and it's something that is almost cultural. You're taught from when you're a kid as a Colombian, and maybe even from any other developing country where poverty is prominent, to take advantage of a situation, to make it work for you. Who cares about the others? Step on whoever you need to get ahead. And that's something that's kind of ingrained and obviously gets up to points of where people in power take advantage. Yeah. Poverty rate, that's one of the biggest things that I hate about here, is that we live in El Poblado, which is amazing, but you go 10 minutes that way or 10 minutes that way and you're in definitely, you feel the developing country feel, right? Or even some third world vibes in some of the other barrios where it's like, shacks made of sticks and aluminum.
I tell people I've never really felt poverty in the U.S. until I came here.
Yeah, you don't know. The U.S. doesn't really know what poverty is, unless if it's like the homeless people.
That's it. That's really
Skid Row and stuff in L.A. and stuff. Yeah.
Welcome back to Make America Remote Again. I'm here with Andrew. We're in Medellín, Colombia. Guys, I'm so excited for this episode because I have someone that has been living in Colombia for almost 20 years.
Almost, yeah.
Almost 20 years, and has a channel talking about real estate and also Medellin tips and how to live the best lifestyle here. And I was telling him earlier, I wish when I got here 5 years ago that this was the case, and now he's taking reins on this along with his business partner. We're gonna dive into all of this, but before we dive in, Andrew, how are we doing today?
I'm doing amazing, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you being here. So dude, take us back, because I learned a lot about you. We had a little lunch break without food, so just a little bit of a hot soup break. And you were telling me about your story of how you got here, because most people get here by choice.
You're right, yeah.
And for you, it was not really a choice to get here.
Yeah.
And take us back to what brought you here, and you've been here for 20 years. Obviously, you love it. So
yeah, I love living here, and I was born in Colombia back in 1981, and in 1985 we immigrated to California, and I grew up there, lived there for 26 years till I was like 28, 29 years old. 2010, I rolled a stop sign. I had a bunch of tickets on my record, and I was driving on an expired driver's license, so had to go in front of a judge. The judge said, you've got about $4,000 or $5,000 worth of fines, and you could pay that. And I'm like, no, I can't pay that. I was 28 years old at the time. I didn't have much money. I didn't know what I was doing with my life, for that matter. But I said, well, do I have any other options? And the judge said, yeah, you can go to weekend jail at the Huntington Beach Police Jail, which is the local jail, not like, the stuff that you see in movies and stuff. I was like, oh yeah, for sure, I'll do that, and it'll clear my debt, right? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, so I get in there on a Friday after work, and then Sunday rolls around, and they get a call from ICE police. I had been illegal my whole life there in the United States because of a series of unfortunate events, bad decisions, and just being unlucky throughout the 26 years that I lived there, so I never actually got my citizenship or residency there. So Sunday came around and ICE police called. I couldn't justify my reason for being in the States. And that weekend jail trip turned into about a month and a half of being in federal prisons, shipped around the country until a Colombian plane was full, and then being deported ultimately back to Colombia and landing in Bogota with just a suitcase.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
This was 2000.
2010, yeah.
2010, so 14 years ago, about to be 15 years.
15, yeah.
That's and then obviously, usually when this happens to a person, they don't stick around the country for that long and become successful the way you have, and obviously being able to build what you've built here. And I was like mind blown, because as I'm talking to you, I'm like, you sound American, you have an American accent. I'm like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
So you came in, so then you went to Bogota, and then what made you come into Medellin?
So I lived in Bogota for 6 months. The first thing that I did, I'm what do you call it? I'm a person that believes in, I've got a mindset of gratitude and of opportunity, right? Like my mindset is that, the world is abundant, and the world and God will provide for me. I just have to push through things. So I don't have a negative attitude. Even when I went through that, I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel negative. I mean, I was at a point where it's like, okay, I'm still young. I can get a job. So that's the first thing I did. I got a job at a call center, getting paid like $3 an hour in an English-speaking call center in downtown Bogota. And I was living in Suba, which is in the north. So I had to take the Transmilenio, their bus system all the way downtown, work there for 8 hours, and then come back at night. And I was there for 6 months. And then a friend of ours, or a friend of me and my sister's, came down to visit Bogota, and he was a complete gringo, white guy from California, coming down to vacation. He was young. He's like, yeah, I just want to find my Sofia Vergara here. And I'm like, cool. So I met up with him, and he said, yeah, Bogota's cool, but like, I'm not meeting the right people. So you want to go with me to Medellin? And I'm like, sure, I'll go to Medellin. We took the bus, which is like 9 hours from Medellin to Bogota. And once I got here, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going back to Bogota. Medellin is it. Yeah.
Well, we're talking about it. Like, I actually love the people from Bogota. I mean, even the girls there are beautiful and classy. My ex from there. I've had multiple exes from there actually now.
Right.
But man, there's something about the city, man.
It is
you don't have there.
Yeah.
And I almost feel, part of me wishes that I started in Bogota and came here to appreciate how much better Medellin is. Because now when I go to Bogota, I'm like, I got to get the hell out of here. Why I'm so close.
Yeah.
So you ended up here, and then obviously fell in love with the city.
Right.
And what for you? What was like the 2010s here like? What was so different here compared to you're in California?
Well, there was a lot less foreigners. Most of the tourism that was here was a lot of more backpackers, and the expats that were living here were mostly like retirees. But there was a very small crowd. There were no, like entrepreneurs. There were no digital nomads back then. It was mostly people that were backpacking through South America from, Europe or California and not California, the United States and Canada. So it was a lot less touristy. The biggest party area was just Parque Lleras, which is very small. And obviously like La 70 and La 33, which is still very local, but it was not what it is now. So so it was a lot more, it felt like a small city, like almost like a small town kind of. Yeah.
So talk to me about the evolution of your career, because obviously what you do now, you did not do 14 years ago. You started as an English teacher at one point.
Yeah, so like when I first when I came to Medellin after the 6 months in Bogota, obviously I quit my job there. But the whole time, my dad had sent me his used laptop, his laptop that he let me borrow. So on my laptop, I was reaching out to clients via email and cold calling by finding them on Craigslist. I would find like the beauty salon person putting up her ad on Craigslist, and then going and looking up her website and being like, oh yeah, your website's shit. I can definitely help you, and this is how. These are the 3 steps how you can get a client right now. And it was basically SEO tips.
Interesting.
And
marketing.
Yeah, so I would basically cold email and cold call people using the Magic Jack, which I still have on my phone.
That's so funny.
And just cold calling and calling. And slowly but surely I got a couple clients. Like my first client was that hairdresser, and then like an attorney, and then so on and so forth. And the first thing that I did once I got paid was hire a person from the Philippines to help me fulfill the work, right? Like the SEO work and the social media work that we were doing back then for these tiny clients that were paying like $300 a month.
Right. And it's your first experience hiring anybody from it sounds like, right?
Yeah, so like that was outsourcing, yeah, for sure, yeah.
I mean, you know what we do. So
yeah, exactly.
I absolutely love it.
Definitely resonates.
So here's a good question: why the Philippines? Why did you hire someone from here?
Oh, because it was like $1 an hour.
Wow.
As opposed to a Colombian would be like that spoke English fluently, that knew
3, 4.
SEO. It would be more than like $4 an hour.
Yeah.
Definitely more than $4 an hour. So it was definitely for the value.
What year are we talking about here?
That was 2010.
2010.
When I first got
okay,
here,
so
yeah.
this is like so you got into digital marketing before it was cool.
Yeah, like so.
Because people were doing digital marketing back then, it was like, well, you don't have a job basically.
Yeah.
That was basically how people perceived it.
Where
today it's like, oh shit, digital. Half the city is digital marketers, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you got your first clients. I mean, doing the old school, which is super cool. And then did you start seeing some success doing this?
Yeah. Slowly, like I said, the clients started to come, pile up a little bit, and I was able to hire locals. Once I got to Medellin, I remember my first hire was a kid from that lives in Envigado, and he spoke English fluently because he lived in the States for a while also, and started this little digital marketing agency.
And were you going after a niche or just anybody that would take
it? Was basically everybody and anybody. I was like yes to everything.
Yes.
Yeah, but now we've niched it more.
Of course, that's the best way to do it. So as the 2010s kind of passed by, and then you have the digital marketing. How did you start getting into? Because I know you started Colombia podcast, which we'll dive into. But what was your next shift from the digital marketing in terms of your career? Yeah,
so. The pandemic was like huge for us because we had already shifted over to doing only digital marketing work for drug and alcohol rehab centers in the U.S. and mental health facilities in the U.S.
Very niche.
Both online and in person, like inpatient, outpatient centers.
Love it.
So we had that niche going, and then the pandemic hit, and that industry blew up. It became like a $4 billion industry overnight almost because everybody and anybody that was isolated had these problems and looking for help. So we grew with our clients, and I hate to say it, but like the pandemic was the best thing that happened. So we made more money, and we started buying real estate here. So we bought a few apartments. We bought 5 apartments. We remodeled them completely, gutted them, remodeled them, and we have them on Airbnb. And then from that, I started the Colombia podcast and my own channel relating my story. So whenever I would talk about like, oh, this is what I did, and these are the returns that we get down here, typical, et cetera, because we get like above 15% return on investment here. So people started reaching out to me like, hey, how can I do that? So I would refer them to real estate agents out here, to professionals that are doing it, and they would drop the ball. They're not used to the American type of customer service, transparency, loyalty, etc. So then I said, okay, well, let me have a crack at it, and I started selling real estate as well, and being a consultant for construction, project managing, not completely, but being their hand-holding kind of for foreigners that want to come down here and buy a place to live or to rent out, and as passive income.
So before we dive more into the real estate stuff, so the pandemic, I mean, it's interesting you say that because pandemic also changed my life, not in terms of business, but I moved here during the pandemic.
Okay,
that was my first time coming here. I moved here during the quarantine because 2021 was still, it was ongoing.
Right.
So then the industry that you chose, so I come actually from digital marketing background, so I'm really, really interested in this because most of the time, my career started selling Facebook ads to chiropractors.
Okay.
And then we started coaching agencies on how to scale their agency and whatever else, and we help people pick their niche. And usually it's like dental and painters, but you chose an industry that touches home for me because, man, it's like it's one of the biggest. It is maybe the biggest epidemic in the U.S.
It is, yeah.
Right?
Next to sugar.
Next to sugar. Right?
Sugar, yeah.
And it is something that is not slowing down. Right? I watched last year. I watched a show called Dope Sick.
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
With Michael Keegan, and they were talking. I mean, the whole thing. You were watching it. It unveiled it has the '90s progress. They were selling OxyContin like Skittles, and then it blew up, and then they made billions of dollars. Yeah. And then the show ends with them getting sued, and you think, oh, it's over. Oh, there's no more OxyContin.
Yeah.
But it has progressively gotten worse and worse and worse. So my question is, how did you get into the industry? Because that is not an industry anybody. I never recommend that industry. I'm like, go for solar, go for e-com. What made you choose that industry?
So. I laugh because I didn't choose the industry. It fell on me. And,
Interesting.
And I'm definitely a believer in the law of attraction and that everything in your life happens for a reason. And, Steve Jobs' commencement speech in 2007 at Harvard, where he says, like, if you look at your life right now and you're young and you're looking to the future and you're trying to connect the dots, you'll never be able to. You can only connect the dots looking backwards at your past. And you're like, oh, that happened because of this happened. And the reason it happened was because in 2002, 2002, when I was, 2002, 2003, when I was 22 years old, I got caught with meth in California and I went to prison on a 2-year bid. Wow. And in the prison, I had to take all of the AA classes, NA classes. After that, in the halfway house, you had to continue that. I was on 5 years after that, doing that stuff. So I learned the ins and outs. Even though I'm not an addict, I was selling it and I did consume it. I wasn't, hooked on it, and I'm not, fortunately, I don't have that part of my brain that, that disease of addiction. So, but I knew everything. So, like I said, when in Medellin, when I was reaching out, cold calling, getting on all these freelancer platforms, one person subcontracted me to do SEO for their client, which was a drug and alcohol rehab center in Boise, Idaho. And they're like, we've been looking for someone like you. You know everything about our industry. How do you know? I'm like, a cousin went to, was an addict.
It wasn't me.
And so they loved me. And that was one of we still work for that client, 9-10 years later, because they've grown with us as well, or we've grown with them.
And the offer is to help them generate, for addicts to find them easier, like a little bit easier.
Yeah, so
it's kind of an industry because you don't want them to grow in a sense where it's like you don't want them to have like infested with a bunch of addicts because then they can't help anybody. Yeah. But they also need to have marketing enough to be seen.
Yeah.
Right?
So the offer we do, it's even more niche. We only do organic search engine optimization, so that because these companies spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on paid ads because they don't know how to organically place themselves, for a keyword, drug rehab in Boise or wherever they're at. So, and it's very competitive. So if you can help them do that, you're saving them, $100,000, $200,000 a month on ad spend, and obviously their client cost acquisition goes down.
And it's a win-win, right?
Oh, it's a win-win for everybody because they're able to help more people. People tend to look at the organic search more than ads. I can't remember the last time I ever clicked on an ad that wasn't on accident. But you understand that it's like.
And also, you're usually searching, like that's one of the services where you search more than getting, like, it's
more
not a product.
Informational.
It's informational, and especially like you need to, going to rehab has to be a choice. Nobody can force you to go to rehab, right? So it has to be something that. Maybe a family's researching.
Yeah, a lot of the times it's a family too.
Oh, almost, yeah. And I grew up in Alpharetta, Georgia, where it's a very affluent area, but the biggest issue we had is druggie. We had a thing called the Triangle where there was like a heroin epidemic. Like there was 12 kids from my high school since 2010. Since you literally moved here, since 2010, 12 people from my high school died.
Oh my God, that's devastating.
And it's the worst thing you can ever hear because it's horrible. Like. I can't fathom, dealing with death is one thing. Dealing with a young death, it's like a whole different ballgame, especially from drugs, where it's so controllable, but it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, it's a beast on its own. Yeah.
It's a whole beast, and that part of my mission to a certain degree, we should protect the borders, all that stuff. But like, one of the issues with illegal immigrants is when they bring in drugs.
Right.
Drugs is one thing. You want to have party, have fun, go do your thing. The problem is when you mix drugs and you mix it with fentanyl, and look how many people die from fentanyl. Yeah. It's a whole different.
You have no control over that because you don't know who's cooking.
Exactly. Most people are not testing the drugs.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different thing. We can do a whole podcast on this. So this is I'm fascinated just because the niche that you chose. So you chose the niche, and then pandemic, you started getting you started doing really your own thing now with the Colombia podcast, which is cool. So tell us a little bit about that transition of starting the Colombia podcast. Obviously, that's how you and I connected, and then we'll dive into some of the stuff that you do now. Yeah.
So me and my business partner with the digital marketing company, we had an office over here in Barrio Manila, and our team was there. And every Friday, evening, I play the guitar. A couple of the employees played instruments, so we just get together, have a couple drinks, play, or just talk, and then we're like, or play video games because I love video games, and we decided, we're like, why don't we just put a camera and microphone and talk about a topic and make a little podcast, because everyone was doing a podcast. I was like, so we started that way, and it evolved into just us interviewing people like this
Yes.
About their life and their experience in Medellin or in Colombia as a whole. And it evolved and it grew, and then it phased out. My business partner, he wanted to travel more, and it became a big production.
Yeah.
You were there. You
Yes,
saw how
it was
big the
sick.
production was. Yeah. So it took a lot of time and effort. So we stopped it, and then I started my own separate channel called the Medellin Buzz, where
Yeah.
I just do it, and it's more guerrilla style than the big production.
Yes, and I want to dive into that, but the Cologne podcast is actually how Andrew and I connected, because right after my crazy story with getting drugged and robbed,
Yeah.
I got connected to you guys, and then, not gonna flex, but one of the biggest podcasts I've ever had. Probably because it
The
was a
most
crazy
views,
story.
yeah.
It was a crazy story, but no, it was cool, man, because it was the first podcast I've ever done, and it was like the first in person. I've done like virtual, but
Okay.
they don't have the same feel. So then, where did the idea come for you about Medellin Buzz? Because you wanted to obviously share what you've seen, what you've learned, and I think there's a lot of people that have tried to dip in. They've dipped here, right? Because there's a lot. You guys are not the only channel in YouTube that does Medellin.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like you are only doing Medellin,
Yeah.
right? So where did that idea come? Like, hey, I want to help people see what I see, learn what I've learned, and then just share it.
Right. So I'm a businessman before anything, and I learned a lot about the YouTube algorithm. And I know that you're not going to get paid on views unless you're getting millions. And I'm like, I know I'm not going to get millions of views unless if I'm going up and down the street videoing the hookers here in Lleras or in downtown, because they're the ones that get millions of views about Colombia, about Medellin particularly. And I'm like, I don't want to promote that.
Yeah.
So I want to promote my life and what I've done, the turnaround in my life, maybe inspire someone, but I want to make money. So I created a product before I even started the channel called the Medellin Masterclass, which is a relocation masterclass for anybody that wants to relocate to Colombia to learn everything and get all the resources and contacts for lawyers, moving companies, real estate, everything that you need to move here, right? So we sell that still, and that's all automated now because we send someone to like a webinar and they watch it and then they purchase it for $1,500. So I'm like, this is what I will sell on the channel. And I started creating content and always plugging the Medellin Masterclass to get visits to that page for people to buy, and at the same time inform people for free, because everything that I talk about on my channel is basically all organized and everything nicely, and even more resources in the masterclass. So watching the channel is kind of like a masterclass,
Yeah.
but a lot of people just want it to be packaged so that they can just follow a guide, right?
Yeah.
So that was the premise of the Medellin Buzz.
And it's genius because so many people have been moving here. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen, I for what I heard, because I came here during 2020, but right around 2018, 2019 is when it started getting pretty populated.
Yeah.
And then over the last 4 or 5 years, it's been like booming.
Yeah, it's been booming. A lot of people, Medellin's been in the news for a lot of bad reasons because of the druggings and all that stuff. I mean, because it's what sells,
Yeah.
in the media,
Yep.
but also for a lot of good things, right? For it being a beautiful city, for the weather, for it being, technologically advanced or innovative, I should say, et
A lot
cetera.
of businesses are relocating here.
Yeah, a lot of people and businesses are relocating here because cost of living is lower, cost of labor is lower, et cetera. So yeah, so from there spawned the real estate thing too, because then people started reaching out to me. It's like, okay, I realized that I can move down here, but I need help buying a property. So then I started helping, and now that's my mission for 2025 is to build a small brokerage firm here. Right now it's just me and we're a team of 3 right now.
Nice.
But I want to build it a little bit bigger so that we can help more people and sell more real estate.
So there's 3 things going on here. You got the digital marketing, you got
Yeah.
Medellin Masterclass, and then you got now the brokerage.
And the Airbnb.
And the Airbnb.
Yeah, so I need 1 more to become multimillionaire. I think that's what they say. You
Yeah.
need 5 streams of income. Yeah.
Nice. That's cool.
Yeah,
That's a
that's
good
cool.
feeling.
Yeah, it's awesome because I don't feel like I'm working. I wake up every day excited to do what I'm going to do.
So obviously, looking back at your life when you got basically deported here
Yeah.
to now having close to 5 businesses
Yeah.
and thriving, it's a pretty big change. So, we talked a little bit about your channel, but in your opinion, you asked me some cool questions. I'm like, I want to ask him this question too. What do you love about Medellin? What made you stay here this long? Because, you are an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs love to explore a lot of times, especially
Yeah.
digital marketing,
Yeah.
digital marketer of anyone. But you've stuck here.
Yeah.
So what are the things that you absolutely love about the city?
Yeah, so number 1 is something that everybody could probably agree with is the cost of living. Cost of living is what keeps me here, but it's not just the cost of living because there are a lot of cheap places to live around the world, in Asia and even in Europe, even in like Central America, et cetera. But cost of living coupled with the lifestyle here, including the weather helps a lot because your lifestyle could be outdoors. Like we could do this any day of the year because the weather's like this all year round. But the cost of living helps you, especially if you're making dollars, to make them stretch even longer. I have a certain lifestyle here where, I have a maid that comes twice a week to my house. She cooks lunch and has dinner as well sometimes, or breakfast, whatever I want her to do. So I come home and all my clothes is ironed, and everything's looking great. And I'm not saying that I'm lazy and and I'm not going to clean, because I used to do that when I was broke. I'd clean all the time because I come from a Colombian family, and if you're Colombian, so having that, saves me time where I can use my time for more valuable things. Now that I have a kid here, that's my priority, is spending time with him, and having the freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want, is the lifestyle that I've created. I call it, Joel, my business partner, we call it lifestyle design. We've designed a lifestyle where our life is, we feel like we're on vacation all the time, even though we do work, quote unquote, for a lack of a better word, but we're doing the stuff we love.
Working hardly or hardly working?
Yeah, hardly working, yeah.
So that's awesome. And what are some things that are not, because the city's not perfect, there's no perfection, what are some cons about Medellin?
I have a lot of gripes with the city, particularly with corruption. There's corruption at all levels here, from the smallest kid selling chiclets to the president of the country. Corruption is a big problem, and it's something that is almost cultural. You're taught from when you're a kid as a Colombian, and maybe even from any other developing country where poverty is prominent, to take advantage of a situation, to make it work for you. Who cares about the others? Step on whoever you need to get ahead. And that's something that's kind of ingrained, and obviously gets up to points of where people in power take advantage. Poverty rate, that's one of the biggest things that I hate about here, is that we live in El Poblado, which is amazing, but you go 10 minutes that way or 10 minutes that way, and you're in definitely, you feel the developing country feel, right? Or even some third world vibes in some of the other barrios where it's like, shacks made of sticks and aluminum.
I tell people I've never really felt poverty in the U.S. until I came here.
Yeah, you don't know. The U.S. doesn't really know what poverty is, unless if it's like the homeless people in Skid Row and stuff in L.A. and stuff, yeah. So
with you go into corruption, so do you see corruption as a pro for you? Like, do you leverage corruption? Because it doesn't really...
That's a good question.
It doesn't really, it affects the city and it sucks, right? But I see corruption as, okay, it's here. I can either not live here, or I can be, I don't want to say partake in it necessarily, because I'm not killing people and, cartel, but in my head, I'm like, if corruption's here, there's corruption in the U.S. too.
Yeah.
But the corruption in the U.S., for you to be able to play the game, you got to be a billionaire, right? And here, you got to make $5,000 a month. And
so it's like, for example, when I come, I'll give you small examples where it's like it works. I wanted to get my driver's license. I could have even gone the regular route or paid $300, and I got my driver's license for a car and motorcycle. Where I bypassed the correct or legal way to do it. But that's how everybody does it. Right? And that's why driving is so shitty here. Because first of all, you don't have to take a driving test.
Nope.
Neither written nor driven. And second of all, it's good for 10 years. So when people say, driving's so bad here, it's because you have to understand the backstory of why driving is so bad here.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so anybody can get, you
license.
Buy a cereal at the store and you'll get a driver's license.
Yeah.
Everybody gets it, and you don't even have to, I don't even know how to ride a motorcycle, but I got a motorcycle license.
It's funny, I always tell people here that the signs and the lights is just decoration. Mm-hmm. It's not really, people are not actually
there's always
paying attention to them.
You can always butter or grease someone up for anything that you need to do.
Yes. Yeah. So to me, what I like about the corruption is that a cop can come to my house for a noise complaint, and in the U.S., I don't want to say they're arrested, but they can give you a ticket or fine. Mm-hmm. Where here, I can just pay them $20 and then they leave.
Because they could give you a ticket, but then you just give them some money and then they leave,
So to me, in the U.S., like the speeding tickets, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's the silliest thing to go to court for a speeding ticket, unless you're belligerently driving like a crazy. But if you're going 15 over, you're getting a speeding ticket. Or here, you might get pulled over, right? I never got pulled over in the U.S. just to get pulled over. Where here that happens and they'll search me. You know, in the U.S., you've got to give them a probable cause. But man, it's so different because you almost feel lawless here because you have to be like a real criminal to get in trouble here.
Yeah.
Where in the U.S., it's like you do something a little bit like left that they don't agree with.
Oh yeah, you're out. Yeah.
You're out.
Yeah, you're out. So yeah, it's but it's a double-edged sword because you could be that person that has a baby now, and your neighbor's partying till 4 a.m, and you call the police, and the police are not going to do anything because it just got paid off. So it's like one of those things, and for example, in Colombia, we've got 50 million people here, but out of the 50 million people, only 2% of them actually declare taxes, and out of the 2%, 1% only pay taxes. So imagine that level of corruption where there's got to be more than 2% of the people that make more than $14,000 a year. In order to declare taxes, you have to make more than $14,000 in Colombia. You're telling me out of 50 million people, only 2% make over $14,000? That's
no chance.
Everyone's lying on their things. No one's contributing to the country, and then we as a country and as people can't go back and say like, oh well, the government doesn't do enough, and we don't have. Well, shit, you ain't paying taxes, are you?
No, exactly. That's why it's hard to complain as two things. It's hard to complain as a non-resident, full-time resident. Yeah. It's also hard to complain if someone doesn't pay taxes here.
Yeah.
And actually, no one I met here actually regularly pays taxes. They want to find a way to not pay taxes because we already have to pay taxes in the U.S.
Right.
And we have the nomad tax. As long as you have the citizenship, I had to pay Georgia tax, and I'm like, I stepped foot for a month in Georgia and I have to pay Georgia tax. That's crazy.
But there's ways around that, meaning
100%.
legal ways around that.
Real estate,
where and here in Colombia too, where you don't get double taxed.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of people don't know, so they're like, oh man, I don't know what to do. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you went this way because my cons were a little bit different than yours. But like because you're a resident and you've been here for 14, almost 15 years, you see things from like more of a Colombian perspective rather than an American perspective that's on and off, right?
Yeah.
I would say I'm more stable here than most Americans or even foreigners, but I'm still on and off, and I'm leaving like 4 times already next year, like in the first 6 months. So like to me, I have to be aware. I'm like, okay, I love Colombia and I see a lot of amazing things here, but also when I speak to people like you, I'm clearly ignorant to some stuff, and I was ignorant to the fact that we have made, and it's partially my fault. I told you I brought some people here. We've made Colombia more expensive, specifically this area. We've made it more expensive.
Yeah.
And when I say this, I don't see that as a bad thing because I bring more expensive, but I also bring a lot more knowledge here.
Yeah.
And I bring in high-level people and high class and people that can contribute to the country somehow, some way, whether it's eating out, whether it's, whatever it is. I mean, bringing businesses here, hiring people. But a lot of Colombians have the perception that it's bad. Like, what is your perception of people that come here when,
Well, I mean, I think there's always, people are stupid. I mean, 95% of the world, is pretty dumb. Meaning that, most people will choose to blame someone for their shortcomings than to actually dive deeper. For example, when Colombians say like, oh, gringos or foreigners are gentrifying Medellín and gentrifying, well, what are they gentrifying? Well, they're all in El Poblado. They're gentrifying El Poblado, which was the richest neighborhood in the history of Medellín. This has been the richest neighborhood where not most Colombians could ever afford an apartment here. So you're saying that El Poblado, they're gentrifying the rich? It doesn't make sense. Their argument is baseless.
Yeah.
I understand some of the people, like for example, in Laurel is saying that they're being gentrified now, but it's not to the point where it's complete gentrification yet. I don't think it's going to get there yet. For example, we're in a building right now where you have the penthouse, but I'm willing to bet money that 95% of the owners of the buildings here are Colombian, because that is the stat.
Almost all of them. We might be the only group.
Yeah, exactly. So you're talking about what are you really gentrifying? What negative are you bringing here? And now selling real estate, I understand the prices and how they've changed. And like I said, pretty much everyone that's selling and some that are buying, I usually only represent Americans that are coming down here to buy, or North Americans, I should say, Canadians as well. But all of the sellers have been Colombian. So and the prices are set by the Colombians. So it's not like the foreigners are coming here like, oh, you've got your penthouse for $250,000. Let me give you $350. because I'm ignorant. No, it's because they are putting it at 350 when it was 250 5 years ago.
How you came to a good question for me is how has the dollar impacted real estate here, because it's been so volatile. So in the last couple of years, do you feel like it's helped real estate? It's not to help. Like what's?
I think it's made some impact, but it's a minimal impact. Usually, what the fluctuation in real estate here is about a 10% appreciation every year, and it's in line with inflation. So really, the driving factor in Colombian real estate and the whole country, I'm talking about, we have micro economics when we're talking about like El Poblado real estate, because it's not the same as Belén real estate, which is over there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's usually guided and steered through inflation. So the dollar fluctuating only helps the foreigners really that are buying, because they have more purchasing power. But real estate has pretty much gone up with inflation, except in El Poblado, where it has blown up because it's the richest area and more money is coming into here.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the dollar fluctuation has been pretty crazy since I got here. At one point, it was like 5,200 for $1. Now it's like 39, 4,000, something like that. So, I know you're not a lawyer, obviously. Do you know the rules for becoming a resident? How much it costs to invest in Colombia's land in order to become a resident? Yeah,
so to buy real estate, to become a resident, that's a whole different story, but you first have to start with getting a visa here. So in order to get the migrant visa as a real estate owner or property owner, you have to invest at least $120,000, I believe it is right now. But that visa is only good for 2 or 3 years. And then, and to become a resident, you have to be here 4 years. So at some point, you're going to have to renew. So when you renew the visa, you have to meet the minimum requirement of investment, which again will have increased based on inflation and the minimum wage going up every year. So if you're going to buy a property today, don't buy it for $120,000. You gotta account for that increase year over year. So buy it for $150. Usually that's the rule of thumb.
Yeah.
And then you're good on your 3rd year to renew, and then on your 4th year you can apply for residency.
Nice. And once you're resident, you're basically set, right?
Once you're resident, you're basically, you don't need any visas or anything. Yeah, you're a resident. Yeah. But definitely consult your lawyer on this. I'm not a lawyer.
Yes, for sure. And then this is something that you've helped people buy real estate here in Colombia?
And do this, yeah.
Okay, awesome. And obviously you work with a lawyer, so anybody that goes through you will...
We have great lawyers, yeah.
Amazing. So where do you see people mostly buying land, like buying, apartments here or land here? Is it usually Poblado, or they're doing it somewhere else?
Yeah, Poblado, some Laureles, but Poblado is still the hot spot, and now the up and coming is definitely Llano Grande, El Oriente, the Orient. What do you call that?
North.
Yeah, no.
It's west.
The south. Yeah, the southeast.
Southeast.
Of this area.
Okay.
It's you were talking about like El Retiro, Llano Grande, even like parts of where the airport's at. So people are buying because there's there's more land. So you're able to buy lots and construct on them in gated communities. That's where the rich usually go. Like I've sold a couple of properties where the Colombians, I always ask, well, why are you selling it? And they say, well, because we bought a lot and we're constructing our house on it. So they need the money from this apartment. So yeah, that's where the local money is shifting for residents and to have an extra house, like a summer house or like their winter house.
Yeah. So before someone, before someone migrates here, what should they do? What type of research should they do? Why can they be sold in Medellin even more than they've been before, besides here for me?
Yeah, so usually someone that's relocating is because they've been here multiple times and they know they want to be here. Only about 3 students that went through the Medellin Masterclass so far are sight unseen. They basically bought the masterclass because they've lived in the United States. They've never been to Medellin, but they're like, I've seen all the videos and I'm moving down there. Which is crazy to me because I'm the type of person that I would do recon first. So I would suggest doing recon first, coming out here for at least a month and try to get a routine going, because there's a honeymoon phase, when you go anywhere in the world. And the honeymoon phase here is hard. It's hardcore. You're talking about everything is cheaper, so you're going out all the time, meeting people, having fun. It's really easy to make friends here. It's really easy to blow through, $2,000-$3,000 in a week, because even though things are cheaper here, but you're having so much fun that, you're You're treating everyone to drinks and food and all that. So it's really easy to bloat to do that. So go past that honeymoon stage, develop some sort of routine where you're being productive, where you're working, doing your thing and having a great life, and then say, okay, I'm going to move down here. And then obviously you have to do, depending on your situation, what you need to do, whether it's sell your assets in the U.S. or keep a couple and then come down here, relocate, find a place to live, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. It's you asked me the same thing. I said, being here for at least a month. I mean, at least 2 weeks. You get a taste of it. But a month being here, creating your routine, creating a community, and then most importantly, just understanding that the honeymoon phase is over.
Yeah.
You can blow 2-3K easily. I mean, that 2-3K in New York is like 20-30K. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
But it runs out really quick. And it also, what is your intention? Do you want to? Are you young? Are you 20, 21, 22 years old? And you want to? I would tell people, get a community. Come here for a month. Get in community, get in touch with myself or Andrew. We're accessible. There's a ton of different communities here. And then ultimately, get over the honeymoon stage because it's pretty easy to get to fall in love with the distractions because the city is very fun and you can meet super awesome people. And it's also very easy to lose focus.
Yeah.
But you said something earlier, which is very true. Making the U.S. dollars and bring that here.
Oh, yeah.
In your opinion, do you think people can come here and thrive off building businesses in Colombia?
Yes, they can. I mean, obviously, if you've got experience in that. For example, if you're a restaurateur in the U.S., you could very easily transition and become a restaurateur in Colombia. But if you are an accountant in the U.S. and you say, I'm done with accounting, I'm going to start a restaurant in Colombia, you're fucked.
Good luck. Good luck.
I've seen it come and go, man.
Yeah.
A lot of people that's like, it was my dream to own a bar.
Yeah.
They open the bar here and then they're fucked after 2 years. They're done. I mean, there's so many people that come and go.
Man, I'm a sole believer that 2 things, I might spoil it. So if someone takes my idea, just remember it started here. Someone that needs to bring ice cream to Colombia because I feel like ice cream here is very okay. I haven't had good ice cream, but I think ice cream would absolutely slash. Also, just in general, postres or dessert, they're very okay here. But even more so, in my opinion, whoever ends up bringing seltzers here, like actual Truly or White Claws or Happy Dads or whatever it is, it's going to blow up because Colombians love to party and seltzers are not a big thing. There's the one pink one, but it's like no one really drinks it.
The JP Chanel.
Yeah, the JP
There's
Chanel.
A couple now too that I've seen in the store, but yeah, it's not a big thing.
They're not like in the U.S. So it's really interesting, man, because in my opinion, I think how someone can dominate like a bar or a restaurant is just providing exceptional service. You don't even have to have good food. If you have decent food, but exceptional service where you fill up my water, you give me the bill immediately, you check in on me, you're conversing, but you're also not overdoing it, man, the amount of, the one bad thing about Colombia, at least here, one of my pet peeves, which I didn't even mention on your interview, is the service here is pretty bad. But we both hire Colombians, and they're hardworking. Yeah. They show up. They love.
Exactly.
When they're passionate, they're the best people to work with.
Oh, the best, yeah.
What do you think makes the service so bad here?
This is a great question, and I always answer it this way. The people that are working at the restaurant that you're going to where you're getting terrible service are people that would never even eat at that restaurant in their whole lives. People that don't even understand that level of service. People that are being trained that aren't being trained. So it starts at the top. Management sucks at training, first of all. So if you have a gripe, it should be with the manager and with the owner. And if they're Colombian, they'll never take responsibility because as Colombians, we don't like to take responsibilities when we're at fault. So coming down to the level of customer service, which is like the front line at the bank or wherever, it's usually people that would never use this service in their life and are not used to that since they're kids. Because when you're a kid, you go to restaurants. You go, to a restaurant, your parents take you and you see the waitress and the waiter, they're running around, the busboys bussing, and they're all working for a tip. Here in Colombia, there is no real tipping culture, so they're not working really for anything. They're just there for their hourly wage and getting through it, and they probably have bills and debts just like everyone else, and they're not there to smile, give you service with a smile. So there's a cultural aspect, there's an economics aspect, socioeconomic reason for why service is so bad, and of course, the level of management is just terrible.
That all totally makes sense, and it's I hate that it's kind of like part of the culture because I'm like, dude, I've hired so many Colombians and half my team is Colombian and they're incredible. So I believe that if my team worked in one of these restaurants, they'd be like, what the hell is going on? Like, we got to fucking go. Yeah. Especially with the problem is if you're serving to other Colombians and they're used to it, that's one thing. But when you bring in Americans, when I'm in Miami the previous week and I'm at a 5-star restaurant where the meal's like $400, and the waitress is like, pop, 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 pop. I expect that here, unfortunately. That's the expectation I have when I travel. And not just me, but all people. As we wind down, man, like, first off, thank you for being here. I appreciate all the knowledge.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So let's talk about 2025. Yes. What are some of your top goals for next year?
Like I said before, develop the brokerage firm, having our own real estate agents, and me taking care of just the marketing part. That's my biggest goal. Second goal is to get my son, who's only 6 months old, into one of the private schools here, because literally you have to do it by the time he's 1, because there's such a waiting list for them. So that's a goal, and also to go to more concerts. I haven't been going to concerts for a while now, because I've been so focused with work and my lifestyle here, where Medellin doesn't have many concerts, but there are concerts all over South America and even in Europe and stuff. So this year is going to be the year of concerts. I already got like 3 lined up.
Nice.
So we're good. Yeah.
Let's go. That's amazing. And then talk to me about, like, as the future progresses, 2025. Obviously, you have a son. You want to see him grow, going to these private schools. Like, where do you see Medellin by the end of the decade? Like, we're entering 2030. Where do you see Medellin?
At the end of by 2030?
Yeah, in the next by 5 years.
Oh yeah. Okay. So definitely, this has been the transition, or the progression of, I guess, tourism and the growth in Medellin has in that regard. When I first got here in 2010, like I said, it was mostly backpackers coming down here, reading Lonely Planet. And then it slowly but surely got to more of like the bachelor party guys coming down here, realizing that prostitution and drugs are cheap here, and you could pretty much do anything if you've got money. They would rent out a big penthouse for like a weekend and have a bachelor party and just party and do all that. So that was like 2015, 2016. Then the pandemic happened. But by then, digital nomads had already started coming here. By 2019, I started seeing solo female travelers in 2019. And then the pandemic happened, and then I started seeing more black people here. And then, when more, I guess, minorities from countries like the United States or the UK or Canada are coming down to a country, it's because now word is out. It's not just the white person or the white couple. And there was no couples back then either. So then now we see more couples and families and LGBTQ. So by 2030, or in 5 years from now, or by 2030, we're talking about people coming down here to live permanently with their families, and people coming down here to basically live out the rest of their life, not just early retirees, but we're talking about older retirees. We've only got one retirement community right now here that caters to that in El Poblado. We're going to see more retirement communities catering to that. More resort-style apartments, kind of like Wake and Morph, that have been built here. Too. Yeah, more of those resort-style of hotels that were never a thing here and haven't even been a thing. I would say Wake might be the closest thing to a resort. But once real money comes down here, you're going to see more resort-style of hotels, and obviously that's going to grow entertainment, restaurants, more options, etc. And obviously real estate is just going to continue to grow here.
Man, the building here is they're not stopping. They're building something new every
Construction's gone,
it's such a popping city, and it feels why I think this is all happening is because there's already been established community. They've gone through ups and downs, obviously in the 90s with Pablo Escobar, and I think even as of recent with the drugging and sexual tourism and all that stuff. So I think it's gone through so much shit to be able to still sustain and still attract so many minorities and LGBTQ and all that stuff. I think you're right. I think it's just going to blow up to the point where it becomes almost like an extension to the U.S. in a sense, or extension to a first world country. And the reason I think that is because it's so close to Miami.
Yeah, 3 hours. Yeah,
3 hours. Like this is my one thing that people don't realize. They're like, "Whoa, what time zone is Medellin?" Because sometimes they're so clueless.
Yeah.
They literally think that we are in freaking
the part
Europe.
of the world. Yeah.
I'm like, "What time is it for you?" "Oh, I'm in New York. It's 3 p.m." I'm like, "It's 3 p.m. for me." What? I thought Medellin is on a whole different world. I'm like, "Yeah, it's crazy, right?" And so people have no idea about that. But what I was saying is, if I need to have it's God forbid, there's an emergency in Atlanta, I can be home.
You're down there,
immediately. Where if I was in Europe or Africa or even Asia, I mean, man, it would take me 1 or 2 days to get there. So that's a huge advantage. And the amount of businesses that have located here, I mentioned, obviously people know what I do with hiring Latinos and especially Colombians. Education here is starting to rise up.
Yeah.
I think people like myself, you've been here for a while, but because we're gentrifying it, whatever that term means. Influencing, sure. We're raising the standards here. That's how I see this.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Same?
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Yeah, and noting that we're going to go through a presidency change in a couple years, and it's probably going to be leaning more conservative. Usually that means that safety levels are going to go up, back up, and really, all this depends on how safe Medellin becomes, and Colombia as a whole becomes. So they have a lot of work to do. The current mayor has more work to do. He's here for a few more years.
He's cleaned up.
He's done pretty well so far, but there's still a long way to go.
Yes.
And the safer it gets, the more it's going to attract investment.
And you mentioned Parquejeras, which when I came here was a complete whoreville and full of drugs. Where now it's like you go in, it's like you can't even drive in there. It's a lot cleaner. I mean, obviously it's still not perfect. It's still, but I used to not want to bring my family here. Where now I feel safe
not like you
bringing
can,
my Eastern European mom and dad, here like.
True.
Yeah, man. So that's super interesting. I'm super excited about Medellin, Colombia. I think it's going to be, it's only going to keep growing. I earlier this year I thought we hit our peak, but this past year, these past few months, and as I've been here, I'm like, I don't think we've hit our peak yet. I think we're going to keep growing. I think we're going to keep getting better. And people like you that are, you've invested your life into this now. You could have gone anywhere else, man. Yeah,
and I still can. I mean, I could literally go to any other country other than the U.S. or any U.S.-owned country.
Sure.
But I choose to stay here, and I like to travel a lot, but Medellin is home, and it's because of this lifestyle that I've developed. And
the community here and the people, and it's just
amazing.
It attracts here.
It's so fun.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, people that are watching this, they're going to go to your channel, learn about the community. Obviously, you have the mastermind that I highly recommend anybody. I wish that 5 years ago I had it. I would have probably not got drugged and robbed, but everything happens for a reason. Actually, it's probably how you and I are connected. So in a sense, it's a good. It was a good.
Everything
the one
happens.
good thing.
You connect the dots looking backwards, not forward.
Yes, exactly. So, Andrew, before we close out the marks, is there anything else that you want to cover about Medellin, real estate, Airbnb that we did not hit the point of for anybody that's interested in learning about the city, learning about real estate here that we did not hit?
I think we hit all the major points. I would just say that, listening to podcasts like this and watching a podcast like this is definitely beneficial. If you're doing your homework and you want to come out here and live out here, make sure that you do, check all the boxes, make sure that you feel comfortable so that you don't fall victim to scams, because scams happen here all the time, especially when it comes to rentals, online, etc. So make sure that you do your due diligence, and if you need any help, hit us up.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect. Guys, thank you so much. And remember, we are making America remote again. Boom.
Thank you.
Thank you.